Last week, the federal government suspended the Nigeria Air project, the concession, and other contracts related to it. Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, while announcing the suspension, says he owes it to the government and Nigerians indeed to give an honest assessment of the situation. The minister says the concession and national carrier will be suspended until he briefs the president. In 8 years, former President Muhammadu Buhari's administration spent over 85 billion naira on the controversial Nigeria Air. Data by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, and compilation of budgetary allocations show that the federal government spent 85.42 billion naira on transaction advisors, working capital, and consultancy bills for Nigeria Air between 2016 and 2023. Despite the huge amount spent on the national carrier, the airline has not only failed to secure Air Operating Certificate, an approval granted by the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority to an aircraft operator to allow it use aircraft for commercial flight operations, but has also not secured a single aircraft for its operations. We have in the studio Professor Obiora Okonkwo, who is the spokesperson, the Association of Airline Operators of Nigeria. Thank you for coming to Newsnight.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, I remember the last time you came to Newsnight. We had conversations around the development on Air Nigeria, or Nigeria Air, as the case may be, and then certain results came after that conversation, meaning that whatever we do here certainly yields results. Speak to us about the suspension of this project. Are we not back to square one? Are we not incurring liabilities?
Well, thank you very much. I commend Arise TV station for their cooperation and understanding in making our own side of story heard and timely out there. As of the action of the minister, we've commended this action. I, as the spokesperson of AON, had a press release yesterday, and that has really been widely publicized. We think he took the right decision. Honorable Minister Festus Keyamo SN is the only surviving minister from the last administration. So I do not think that anything about Nigeria Air should be anything new for him, because some of these shenanigans were passed through the FEC. He may have been seeing that from outside as just another minister attending the FEC, but none that is on a mission to Minister of Aviation, probably with all the best of intentions. Here we have the first-hand opportunity to see the original documents and then see deeply what it is all about. And I have no doubt that from the press release or conference he gave, the intention of the suspension is to review the true position of things. So I have no doubt that when he looks deeply right inside there, he will see things that will be more shocking than he had ever imagined. And all he will need to do is just to close the books and walk away from Nigeria forever. Because for us, we know so much more that we were able to say before the national television, to the public. Like I've always said, we're not whistleblowers, we're not after anybody, but there were a whole lot of shameful things that took place there, which I want to believe that for the Honorable Minister, who had demonstrated a good sense of purpose and intention and commitment to do the best for the industry, he will see nothing encouraging there for him to continue with that. But I don't want to preempt the outcome of his further investigation, but we still maintain that everything about Nigeria Air is not for any other interest of the people of the industry, but it was self-serving.
Self-serving.
Yeah.
Now, perhaps that's why the National Carrier Project has continued to suffer one setback after another from one successive minister to another. But then, what would be your counsel over and beyond what you've said? What would be your suggestions to the new minister if he's going to make a wide departure from history?
Well, he should be committed to nothing except for common good. The only stake he will have in this mission to that aviation ministry should be nothing for common good. His stake should be the stake of the stakeholders. It should be the stake of the off-takers who are the operators, and then with the best intention to expand the economic horizon for Nigeria, increase our GDP, which I still believe that the aviation industry is a low-hanging fruit. They need to discover it. They should sit down, listen to us, and see areas that something can be done quickly. The good enough thing about it is that it doesn't require so much money from the government. It will only be just doing the right thing by putting the right policies in place and ensuring that it's properly implemented. If he does that, I have no doubt that if you aggregate the outcome, as long as he will be the Minister of Aviation, he would have left a whole lot of legacy that will leave his mark in the aviation industry for a very long time to come.
Power play, Professor, power play, government intervention, these are some of the factors that have been responsible for the failure of this project over the years. When and how will Nigeria depart from these limiting factors and really move in the interest of the masses?
Well, you said power play and government intervention. It's not really. It's more of selfish interest. The selfish interest overrides every other factor you have enumerated. So as long as this selfish interest is set aside, you may have the best of intentions. For instance, we, the operators, were part of the aviation roadmap. We were attending the meetings, we were following up the discussions up to the point that recommendations were submitted to the ministry, and then it was hijacked. Nobody else knew what was going on with the recommendation, and everything out of that recommendation was being implemented to the opposite. So that is the problem, because that's when the selfish interests come in. For instance, in the aviation roadmap, you still have outstanding the issue of MRO, the issue of a leasing company. And now we're already discussing with the new minister. We will make our own submission to him very soon. But we still maintain that government has no business in aviation business. You don't need to pump in money. I mean, you have enough competent, solid Nigerians who are very patriotic and committed to growing the industry, and have shown the capacity to do that. Just the right policy, doing the right things at the right time. So my advice to the minister should be to continue to be committed to his own dialogue and engagements with the stakeholders. We will not advise him wrongly, because everything we should work out with him should be to the overall interest of the industry and then the interest of our investment. He should be wary of the so-called aviation experts who will be throwing in all sorts of proposals and guiding him on new things to engage in. That's usually very dangerous for any minister, because they might find us attractive. But we hope that with the experience he has gathered in the last 8 years as a minister of the Federal Republic, he would be able to decipher what works well and what doesn't work in this ministry, because he has little time to start making the necessary impact. But so far we're satisfied. He's taking the right steps and moving in the right direction. The much we have gotten from the last administration was just the marketing, the local operators. That's not fair. That was where we were left to our tent after the COVID. We were given little or nothing. Even the so-called aviation Ethiopian airline that is being promoted as almighty operators, they got over 1 to 2 billion US dollars from their own country. We were left with nothing, and that was intentional. Now we know the whole intention was that we would collapse. Nobody gave us a chance. But instead of the aviation industry in Nigeria collapsing, you have had about 2-3 new operators since the COVID. And there's no operator operating in Nigeria before COVID that collapsed because of COVID. That was why it's on record worldwide that we have recorded the fastest growing aviation industry in the whole world after COVID. So I really think that we continue to request for government to look into politics that are very toxic. No matter what they think that we're not doing right, there's no foreign operator that can survive in this country for 1 month. You can't survive. It will only take a hardened, patriotic Nigeria to remain in this business. No foreign, I mean, look at how they're crying just because they are owed some few dollars. You don't know how much of our money. Can you believe that we have our own millions of dollars stocked in our own Nigerian CBN? As much as we still borrow money at over 20-something%. These countries that are crying, their money is just about 2% or even 0% borrowing. But we still have our head above the water.
That brings me to Virgin Nigeria.
Yes.
In 2005, when Richard Branson came to Nigeria and had the agreement with the then President Olusegun Obasanjo, we thought it was a huru, like it was a respite. And then 3 years after, it went like into the thin air. I mean, that was part of government intervention and what have you, and the parking space, landing space, controversies and all that. So speak to us about how then we can encourage, if it's not for the government, how then can we encourage private participation? Well,
it's hard to do business in so many other sectors, but particularly in aviation industry that has its own specific, it has regulations not only locally but internationally. Government need, this current minister has to work with all the regulatory agencies, particularly NCA. There's a need to review certain acts. We are being overtaxed, we are being overcharged, multiple charges, good chunk of our revenue that come from only ticket. Ticket is the only thing we do. You buy aircraft, you employ people, you train them locally overseas, you buy trucks, you buy a car, everything we do, the only way we recover the money from is ticket. Cargo during the passenger period is very, very minimal. So, and in this ticket, if you sell it, there are so many other government agencies that have statutory deductions that go to them. We think it is too much. Something has to be done. So at the end of the day, much of the money that should be liquidity within our operational funds are paid to the government agencies, especially NCA. There is a ICAO law that such a regulatory agency, I've said that before and I've said it again, is only there not to make money, but to recover its own expenses. But today, they get this chunk of money paid to NCA, and then government also go into that and use that for other business. But there is it's against the law, because ICAO said you cannot use the money from here to do any other thing except for aviation. So we're calling on all these things. And then we're also thinking that if for any reason the government want to do their own aviation business, we are not in a position to stop them. We're only asking them to do it the right way. Go by the rules. Because anything they twist any of the agencies to do, because it's government, is going to affect our own interests worldwide. Aviation is just a global village. It's one family. Everybody's watching.
Right.
And then we're also insisting that even if anything is coming on board from that side, they should not be given undue privileges. All right? Imagine like from the papers before us, the so-called Nigeria Air should be having 15 years of tax-free, and then government should just be writing off and then indemnifying every loan they will ever have. Where do you see that happen? You are cleaning the local industry. So we are saying we have the capacity to do what we have to do. And even if you look at their business plan according to them is that in 10 years they will have 10 aircrafts. There are already Nigerian operators that have 10 aircrafts. So some people might be mistaking it like they try to put it that no, we're afraid of competitors. No. In the days of Nigeria Airways, there was Nigeria Airways, there was Aero, right? And other local airlines. Some of them are still operating and there's no Nigeria Airways. We're not really interested. The air is huge, it's big, anybody can come in, but do the right and comply with regulatory requirements. Beautiful. And don't just get into undue privileges, beautiful, which we don't get. That's what we insist. And for us on our own side, we say this government should know that aviation is a big sector that can open up a big avenue for revenue earning.
Professor,
both foreign exchange and otherwise, job creation and so on and so forth.
Right, Professor, aviation is a big sector that can open a wide spectrum of the revenues.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, speak to us about the model. I've let you talk about your challenges and what have you, but then speak to us about the model that we can follow as a nation if we want to have a viable national carrier. What model would you recommend?
Well, first of all, it has to be strictly private sector driven. And I insist on this because most countries all over the world, America, London, and all, Germany, some of these national aircrafts you see with their name, they're just flag bearers. They are not government owned.
Right.
So if that is defined, then you now have to look at the existing regulatory systems. How does it help or impede on the progress of the local operators? So it should be a model where government should remain at the backside and then continue to come on with policy that will support and make the ease of doing business in aviation. Basically what you require is access to funds, and I've said in one of my outings that the currency of aviation is dollar. You know, I mean, even if you're dealing with vendors or other people in most part of the world, you get the invoice in dollar. So if we, the operators here, who earn our money in dollars, are not able to access, in Naira, sorry, we earn our money in Naira, we're not able to access dollars for our own obligations and commitment to partners and vendors.
Outside of Nigeria.
It's not going to work. And then other thing is, make the capital available. Don't give us money. Don't dash money. No grant, but a single digit loan that has a long term and easy to access will help this sector. And we are ready to commit everything that is required for it to grow. That's our position, and that should be our direction and advice to the government.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Obiora Okonkwo, spokesperson, Association of Airline Operators of Nigeria, and CEO United Nigeria Airlines. Thank you very much indeed for coming to Newsnight.